Okay, so welcome. Welcome to everyone from our community, first timers, people who've been before. I can see quite a few of you here, so thank you again for coming. And obviously, thank you very much to our speaker, Johanna Rothman, who an eminent speaker and author, very prolific author. We've spoken before on other meetup groups. I've hosted Johanna before, and every single time that I've been involved in any of those conversations and talks, there's just an absolute wealth of diamonds of experience and so on. So it's lovely to have you here on Sooner, Safer, Happier. And we absolutely believe that your way of perceiving the world, of encouraging people to be both caring and bold and blunt in the workplace is very humanizing. And Sooner, Safer, Happier, we're all about spreading a more humane way of working. So it's really lovely to have you on and also learn from, I think there's a lot to be said about the last time we spoke, the last time came onto one of my meetups, you talked about mindset and behavior. And it's something I really hold dear. So like what you said, and whether you still believe this or not, I don't know, I'll test this out now. But the agile mindset is something not to be too bound up in. It's more about the behavior. You know, it's one thing to think something, but actually to display it and to behave it and to act upon it is the real challenge. So from your talks before, I've always found it very encouraging that that's what you advise people to do, to act on this. So without further ado, I do tend to witter on, so I don't want to witter on for too long. Really pleased that you're here talking about innovative organizations. And so I'll hand over to you, Johanna. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Matt. So I'm going to talk about how managers have had this approach to change as we need to manage change, we need to plan change, we need to manage the risks. And instead, if you want innovation, I say you need to manage for change. You want to optimize for small change as often as possible. And I see this in organizations all the time. The managers, the middle managers, everybody says they want innovation, but they act in a way that maybe does not encourage innovation in a way that teams and even up through the middle managers can really use. So I often see that organizations, and I'm going to talk about this as organizations, instead of specific managers, because managers are part of the system. So the organization demands a lot of detailed plans. We're going to plan for a year. For that, we need estimates. We want schedules. My husband was looking for a low-tech, something that would not be a Gantt chart. And he came across all these supposedly agile scheduling tools where they had literal Gantt charts for 2 weeks. And he said to me, how can your industry do this? He's a chemist by training. He only deals with hardware and production. And he said, you're all about software. You're all about change. Why are managers looking to see what you're doing every single day or every 2 weeks? Don't they trust you? And I said, that's the problem. They don't. So it's all about the details and a lot of upfront planning. And then you're supposed to be agile. And the problem is your organization is not offering you opportunities. If you know the value of your work, if you know the goal for this product, if your managers trust you to do the right thing, and they might request demos on a regular basis, because what is the Agile Manifesto say? The best thing about working software is the best measure of progress. I probably destroyed that paraphrase, but we want working software, working product. So managers should absolutely request demos. And if your team is not doing a demo at least once a week, you are missing out on many, many ways to increase your agility. So this is what we have. The organization demands this, but this is what we want. A more, not just humane way of working, but a different way of working. And when I see this collision of demand versus offer, I often think of theory X and theory Y. So McGregor, back in the 50s, 1950s, not the 1850s, had this, came up with these two theories of work. And this is all about theory X, where people avoid work, people need to be controlled, they don't want responsibility, it's just about the money, they have no creativity except for getting around the rules. And you might think about your policies in your organization and think about, are your policies, and especially performance management, all about theory X? Because I suspect that they are. In contrast, theory Y says, we want mastery. We want autonomy so we can manage ourselves. We want responsibility so we can do the work that the organization needs, or that the product needs, or that the team needs. And that we want to work and learn to accomplish something much greater than we are. So theory Y is all about autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right? I said those words. And theory Y is also that people are creative. So when we think about what happens in managers in the organization, we see managers are often a piece of, they have to work in theory X, even though they want to offer theory Y and work in theory Y. That's because the managers are part of this greater system of work. So if we want innovation, which I think most of us do, and it's always a question of how much innovation we want or need. We don't all need total innovation on one side, and we rarely have total definition on the other side, but we're mostly somewhere in the middle. If we want innovation, we need to innovate our management and leadership practices. So I want to talk about these three ideas: management teams at all the levels working together, organizational whip, and eliminating performance management. And I think that the way you get management teams working all together is with theory Y management for management, right? When McGregor was talking about theory X and theory Y, you were talking about the people doing the work, right? The people at the unit of the team, or even in factory work, the people actually doing the job. I don't think it's necessary there. It's not sufficient. We need theory Y management for management. Because if we don't have theory Y management for management, we get what we have, which is, this is kind of a typical product organization where the leaders have their own stuff, right? This is the front end dev director, the middleware development director, the back end dev director, the platform dev director, the QA director, tech pubs director. How can you get cross-functional teams if the managers each have their own rewards, right? So when I saw, I've seen this in several of my clients over the past few years. Each of these people, each of these directors had their own specific rewards. They had, the front end dev director had this reward of making the UI better to use, or some nonsense like that. The middleware was all about speed. The back end was a little bit congruent with the platform, but they were all about efficiency on the back end so that the middleware could do their speed. Those three directors actually had corresponding goals, but they mostly had separate goals. And the tech pubs and QA directors had totally different goals. about when to release the product and what the product looked like. So if you have organizations based on individual rewards, you will get slow almost slow or no collaboration, because everybody has to maximize their rewards. We get slow decisions, and we optimize at too low a level. So if you have every single manager having their own rewards and their own goals and their own everything, then anytime somebody has a question, the questions go up and over, right? And the answers return and go up and down. So you have to go all the way through the organization, up and over, up and over. Instead, if you have cohorts of management teams, you are much more likely to be able to get faster decisions. So we already talk about teams for senior leadership and management, right? We talk about the senior leadership team. We talk about product development teams, or even project teams if you're not really focused on the product. But if you have a cohort at one level, right, that senior leadership team, or the lowest possible level, the feature teams or the product teams, why not have cohorts at every single level? Why not have a manager team? Now, you might say, this is a lot of people on a team. Yes, it is, which might mean that the more you practice management teaming, the more you might have to change what your management looks like. That's a different talk. I'm not going to go there. But if the directors have one team and they have a single overarching goal for that one team, they are much more likely to succeed for the organization. So when we optimize down, as in resource efficiency, we get the lowest possible level of efficiency, but we get the least, I'm going to just say this, the least responsible outcomes for the organization. The more teaming we have at every single level, the more we have much, much better outcomes for the organization. So I always say to optimize up. Can we optimize up instead of an individual to a team? Can we optimize up from the team to the cohort of teams, and that includes managers? Can we optimize up, 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 and up? That's what I want to do. And that's kind of lean thinking for product development and management. So let me talk a little bit about management and flow efficiency. We see this a lot in teams, right? The work assignment comes in, they do their part, they hand off, well, this is an expert, they hand off to the next person, they do their part, they hand off to the next expert, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then when we work in flow efficiency, which is what we want from Agile teams, the work assignment comes in and a team or a subset of the team works together. So I really like triads or quads to work together. So we might have one or two developers, a tester, maybe even a tech pubs person if we need documentation. They all work together. Well, I love mobbing and ensemble work. I'm also fine with swarming. They work together to finish the work. This is what I'm saying managers need to do as teams. So when a management team needs to make a decision, right? Because those are what the management outcomes are. We often think about, well, this manager needs this information and this manager needs that information. No, the managers get together for a little bit, decide what kinds of information do they need. And if they don't have an information radiator that allows them to get that information on a regular basis, this is why demos are so important, then they can set up an information radiator so they can get that on a regular basis. But they learn what they need to make decisions. And when they work in flow efficiency, they make much, much faster decisions. Zach had a comment at the beginning of my talk that says, we want innovation, but we don't want to change anything. If managers worked in flow efficiency, that would change how they work. And it might be just enough change to really create an agile organization, or at least business agility. But without a common goal, without enough common rewards, it's really, really hard for managers to do that. So Zach, yes, you're totally right. The next thing is to reduce organizational WIP. WIP is work in progress. I use the word WIP altogether all the time, I should say. So work in progress, not whipping people. Definitely not for more work. When we reduce organizational WIP, it's about reducing all the work we have to do at various levels. So the problem with a lot of organizational WIP is that we run into the fallacy of resource efficiency. And one manager actually said to me, look, when everyone is busy, we get much more work out of them. You know the saying, give something to a busy person, they'll get it done much faster than a person who has not enough to do. And I said, you are correct up to a point. When people have reached something like 60 to 70% busyness, BUSY-ness, that adding more to their list does not get more work out of them. Now they start to multitask. Now, do a lot of us have slack time during the day? Yes, and there's an excellent reason for that, because the more we need to think, the more slack time we need. When we were talking just before this, I said to Matt, I had one of my nonfiction books in a state of kind of weirdness. I have needed all the slack I have since the most recent version of that book to really think about what is the user journey through this book? What is this product need to do for the readers who need to read it? I use my Slack to keep thinking about that. Do I have the final answer? No, of course not. I'm going to ask some other people to collaborate with me as in flow efficiency to figure this out. So resource efficiency optimizes for outputs and time. Flow efficiency optimizes for outcome. So think about that the next time your manager asks you to multitask and do more work than you could possibly do. The more teams work together, the more likely you are to finish work, right? That collaboration really makes a huge, huge difference. So you all need think time, you all need collaboration time. And I will also say, you, especially if you're an introvert, I am not an introvert. I think by talking, I know I irritate everybody else around me. I have learned how to shut my mouth. But for those of you who are introverts, you need time to think separately, or at least time in a given workshop or meeting. You need time to think before you speak. So how we take in information, how we output information is a function of our personalities. But the more we reduce organizational WIP, the more we can manage the WIP we still have to finish, right? We can make accommodations for each other. We can learn how to collaborate together. So I know I already gave you these pictures, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about how managers think. So especially for performance management, that review nonsense that you all have to live with every single year, when we focus on the person, which is what we do in resource efficiency, we do not focus on the flow of work. And so we think that we can understand what every single person does in a given team. But the problem with resource efficiency is it does not account for the delays. It does not account for competition between the people, between people on a team. and between, let me rewind. As to not account for needing expertise between people in a team and between teams. So hang on a second. The more we use resource efficiency, the longer all the work takes. Just think about code review. If you have a separate step for code review, and I am a huge fan of code review, right? I really like code review. I like it though in pairs or in swarms, where we don't have to interrupt ourselves to put our work down and pick up something else that got assigned to us, especially if it got assigned to us in a task manager, something like Jira. There's nothing wrong with Jira except how we use it. So let's really think about that. So if we think about the flow of the work, we would take a team and say, how can we integrate code review into our work every single day? We might say, well, in the mornings, we're all going to work on our own stuff. I'm not excited about that. And then in the afternoons, we will do code review in teams of 2 or 3 with and for other people. Now, think about what this means. How much code or tests can you possibly write in a morning? Okay, some of you can write a lot. I used to be able to type a lot of code very fast. Then when my code went through code review, I realized how much of it I could throw away. So fine. But if we think about limiting how much code we write in the morning and emphasizing, optimizing for collaboration in the afternoon, we have much less multitasking. So I've offered you the idea of working in swarms where we all get together and work on one thing at a time. And when we are ready for code review or test review, we say, I'm ready for code review or test review. Who is ready to work with me in this swarm? And that everybody figures out what to do. I've suggested that you might pair or ensemble. And this other suggestion is about how can we reduce the WIP so we can get feedback on the WIP as fast as possible. Now that's a developer-centric or product developer-centric point of view. But how can you apply that to management? Look at your management decisions and say, who do I need to make this decision with? Do I need to involve the team that I lead and serve? In the case of a program manager, is it all the teams I need to lead and serve, or is it the program team? Is it my cohort of managers or directors at whatever level I am? If you're a Scrum Master, do you work with other Scrum Masters across the organization? How can we focus on the flow of work to remove impediments to make decisions that make sense for everybody else in the organization? That's what the flow of work looks like for a manager. So instead of utilization, why does the organization exist? What is the overarching goal for the organization? And then why does this management team exist? Why do the product development teams exist? What is the overarching goal for the product, for the service? What is the purpose of our work together? Then you can look at what not to do for now and reduce the organizational WIP. And I really like experiments to reduce or eliminate wait states, because the more we can get rid of the wait states, the less expensive everything is. So I really like to limit the organizational WIP to support the flow of work through the teams. The project portfolio team can limit the organizational WIP. Managers can limit the organizational WIP for their teams. Scrum Masters, product owners, all have a responsibility for limiting the team's WIP. So if you limit the WIP at all levels, you are much likely to see a much faster cycle time. Now, let's talk about performance management and why you should eliminate it. First, it doesn't work. We have decades, starting in the 1970s and 80s, and I have references for them in the Modern Management Made Easy books. Performance management does not work. Ranking absolutely does not work. Stack ranking, and especially where you're supposed to rank and yank, where you stack, how can you even think about stack ranking everybody in a department? How do you compare what developers do with each other, and then with what testers do and with what writers do, and those DevOps people and all the other people whose expertise we need to produce products? How can you say one of them is number one and one of them is number two? I don't understand how anybody can even think that this is useful. So ranking doesn't work, and especially if you rank and yank, we're going to eliminate the bottom 10% of our workforce. Well, there's something wrong with your hiring if you think the bottom 10% can really be eliminated and not have an impact on the teams that they are on. Comparing people or teams absolutely does not work. Right? How can you compare team A against team B when they're working on different things? And competition doesn't work. All this nonsense, so that you can figure out how to give 2% raise to this person and a 3% raise to that person and a 1.5% to that person. Total nonsense. So just throw out performance management. You can create salary bands. I'm going to talk a little bit about career ladders later. Salary bands and reasonable cost of living and all that other kinds of raise at the end of a 3 months or 6 month or 1 year period. But the first thing that does work instead of performance management is feedback, especially reinforcing feedback. So when I say to managers that their job is to create engagement and they can put theory Y to use, they say, but we need raises to create engagement. And I say, you do, right? People need appreciation for their work. They need to know that the company values their work. And the way we show value is with raises. But instead of creating engagement with pitting people against each other, we can put theory Y to use. We can explain the purpose, the why does the company exist, the why does this team exist, the why for personal mastery, all this. There is a why at all levels of the organization. From the very top, what is the strategy for this organization? What is the strategy for this product? Which customers do we want to serve and make their lives better? All kinds of things. So if we really use theory Y, we can encourage personal and team mastery with flow efficiency. And then we get to create an opportunistic culture. Every single time, back when I was an individual contributor in the organization, every so often my boss would say to me, well, my various bosses would say to me, you don't really know how to do this yet, Johanna, but would you like to do this thing over here? And I'd say, sure, why not, right? I was not wedded to just development or just support or just testing or just project management or just program management. And I did all of those things. I was inside the organization for almost 18 years, and I went back and forth between jobs at various levels and even levels in the organization when I tried new things. Being able to try new things meant that the more I managed other people, right, I led and served them, the more I had empathy with the jobs that they were supposed to do. Trying new things made me a better developer, a better tester, a better project manager, a better program manager, and a better manager. Those of you who have a limited set of functional skills, really think about where do I want to expand those functional skills a little bit more? I am not saying that if you are a manager, you take great pride in that role that you have, that you must try something else. But the more you consider new things, the more you experiment with new things, the more empathy you have for others, and the more valuable you become, not just to the organization, but to your career. It's a win-win. So I said that reinforcing feedback was much more useful than change-focused feedback. I will just tell you, I have a very heavy foot on the gas pedal. I like speed. I really try and manage my speed loving to the highway. I know that there's somewhere in here in Germany, and I believe on the Autobahn, you can take your own speed. We don't have that here in the US. If we go too fast, we get pulled over and given a ticket or hauled away to jail. So I practice my reinforcing feedback on this particular road, not far from my house. Notice that it says your speed, the maximum here is 25. So, and your speed was 22. I had my daughter take this picture. I did not take this picture by myself. So, and yes, you can see the amateurishness of this picture. It's in my car with my phone. However, I found that reinforcing feedback like that does me much, much better than any kind of change-focused feedback. And this is exactly the same for people at work. So if you have not yet read Behind Closed Doors, Secrets of Great Management, this is how you offer peer-to-peer feedback. And this kind of an approach to peer-to-peer feedback works whether you're a manager, offering feedback to people you lead and serve in your management cohort, and to your manager. The more you offer reinforcing feedback, well, let me give you an example. Back when I was in the organization, I should say, I am known for my bluntness and directness. My entire life, I have been blunt and direct. That part is not going to change. However, a manager inside the organization offered me this feedback when I was a program manager. She said, on the way back from a meeting, a program team meeting that she happened to be at, she said, I really like what you did back then. That was her opening to deliver the feedback. She said, instead of telling people they were wrong, you said, here are alternate ways of perceiving this situation, right? And she enumerated the three options I had discussed. She said, that allowed me to pick up on your options and say, here's why JR is right. Right. So she not only had my back, she was advocating for me in that meeting. And then she said, when you offer people options, when you use all of your diplomacy and tact, and you did not need much here, people hear you better. She did not tell me I was too blunt and direct, as some of my managers have. She actually said to me, here's what you did right, and here's how you can do it again. Now, do I always act on that feedback that she so wonderfully gave me? No, but I have it in the back of my head. So I am better at this, and I continue to be better at this. And that's what we want. If you tell people what they need to do differently, and especially if they say to you, don't do something, that does not tell you what you need to do. Instead, turn that feedback around and say, here's what you need to do. And here's an example of when you just did it. People are something like 9 times more responsive to reinforcing feedback than change-focused feedback. And the more reinforcing feedback you offer at all levels, right, with your colleagues and up and down the organization, the more people will do what you want them to do, right? They will do more of stuff that they see as successful, and therefore less of stuff that they see as needing to change. Now, I'm going to talk about a little bit about career ladders in a minute, but the big idea here is careers are a jungle gym. This notion of a linear career where you start at one level and you go up your entire career, getting mastery for this one thing. I've been working since 1977, so a long time, and I have done many, many different things. Even as a consultant, I've done many, many different things. So I want to be able to optimize for learning, actually optimize for autonomy, mastery, and purpose for my career that also adds value to the entire organization. And if you're a manager, this means you need regular one-on-ones. You need to create goals that support the entire team, not a single person. So if any of you have cascading OKRs or cascading MBOs, throw them out. They're just useless. Think of a goal that supports an entire team for a product, for a cohort, anything. And then use autonomy, mastery, and purpose to accomplish that goal. That means you probably need to create some team-based compensation. Here is a way you can think about an agile career ladder. This is very simplified. That's because a lot of you have more than 6 levels in the organization. This career ladder is based on influence. So I'm assuming that there are technical, team, and product-based influence. These are not specifically development, but product development. So code writer, code tester, code documenter, right? Because code is the vehicle by which we ship the product. And then there's product focus and influence. So I think that there's the project manager, scrum master, product owner, facilitator. All these people are product focused and have influence literally across the organization at their levels and up and down, right? This more like a triangle. And then there's culture-based influence, because management is all about the culture. What can we discuss? How do we treat each other? And what do we reward? That's the culture. Can a team have culture at their level? Yes. And it's always created and reinforced by the manager. That's why I have culture-based influence here. So if your organization does not yet have a career ladder like this, I mean, some organizations have a dual track, but I think we need at least 3 tracks right now. I'm working on some of this with some of my clients, and HR is concerned, mostly because they don't work in product development organization. They don't work as part of a product development team. So they don't see this various kinds of influence. So when I think about what managers can do to create innovation, if they manage for change and they optimize for learning, we are much more likely to get the innovation that we want. We are also much less likely to have to be slaves to a framework, or God forbid, installing an agile framework, right? Those don't change the culture. But the more we manage to optimize our learning, the more we manage for change, the more likely we are to get innovation. That means we have to start with management innovation, because we need to free managers from all the kind of nonsense they have to deal with right now. So the 3 big ideas were create management teams with an overarching goal using theory Y. Yes, theory Y for the managers, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, creativity. People want to do really great things. The second is reduce the organizational whip. And the third is eliminate performance management. And you might not be in a position to do any of these yourself. However, you can challenge your manager to using feedback, reinforcing feedback every single time they start to manage you with theory Y. You can challenge your manager to work in flow efficiency and to help your team work in flow efficiency. Start small. Start with something you can manage. Start with something you can influence. Start with yourself, right? If you have a team where everybody is supposed to open their own story at the beginning of an iteration, ask the team, what if we experimented with one iteration where we all worked on just one or two things at the same time? We would have to work in triads or quads. What if we just tried it and looked at our cycle time and see what we can do, right? Use flow efficiency where you are. That will help your managers say, oh, flow efficiency is really going to work. This team is now really productive for whatever version of productive, and they will treat you with theory Y as you nudge them to do theory Y. So these all come from the 7 modern management principles. These are in the modern management books. I've talked about a bunch of them already. I'm not going to read them to you. I hope that we stay in touch. Yes, I keep writing books. I really like to write books. And I hope that you sign up for the Pragmatic Manager. I would love to link with you on LinkedIn. And there's the link for the Modern Management Made Easy books. I'm going to stop the share so I can see your smiling faces. Yes, there we are. Okay. All right, Matt, you're going to facilitate me.
Yes, thank you so much, Johanna. That's another absolutely superb talk. And I'd like to add to that list of where people can see that your creative output would be the creating an adaptable life, or createanadaptablelife.com. Because again, I was talking to you prior to us starting to record and so on, and saying how you know, I like the creative writing aspect, and create an adaptable life is effectively where you focus that creative writing into not just obviously business stuff, but just life in general, isn't it? I think. And yeah. that there is no such thing as a difference between a work-life balance. It's all just life, isn't it? So some of that stuff is actually just as useful to take wherever you roam, in work or outside of work, and I think that's something that I've enjoyed reading, and so also actually that thing of and I wanted to run this past you to see what you think of this idea, and it's an idea I sort of share with people fairly often, and some of the things that come through in your talks strike me as people don't always like this, but as political, and I often talk about people who practice agile practices or agile management practices as a bit tenuous, but office political activists, like the office politics that goes on, and we should be there being active within that in order to change sort of how people vote for what they want to do. I wondered what you thought about that.
So thank you for this, because I've been really thinking about this. The more we have individual goals, the more office politics I see. Yes. And politics are not necessarily a bad thing, no, but they don't get the organization where we want to go. So if we want an organization to succeed, more of us need to have the same goal. And now I live in the US, and I'm not sure how many of you actually are from the US or know about, well, you all know about our crazy politics right now. But we have 2 major political parties, and they have splinter groups inside of those parties. So nobody has an overarching goal at this point. Yeah. And you can see this in what's going on in our country right now. So if I take the tragedy of the school shootings, we might have an opportunity for some small steps for the mass shootings. I mean, we're the only country in the world that has mass shootings. And I suspect that it's because we have a very individualistic culture with an insufficient need for collective action. We are seeing those two collide right now. And do I know what to do about it? Absolutely not. But the more we have individual goals, the less we can work together as various kinds of teams for a greater purpose. And that is part of our strength and problem, right? So our greatest strengths are also our greatest problems. If I can bring that back to work a little bit, my greatest strengths is my ability to see the system and be blunt about it. My greatest weakness is the same thing.
Yes.
It goes around in a circle. So
that resonates very much for me. Absolutely does. And the thing, like you're saying there about the politics and the collective action or agreement and so on, that again reminds me of a quote that I often misquote people, but a quote again from a political sort of a well-known political person. So Harry S. Truman, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care about who gets the credit, which sort of like reflects and reminds me of management teams as theory Y teams supporting one another, not having individual goals and so on.
Well, and that actually goes directly to Manish. I don't know if I said your name correctly. That goes exactly to his question. How can traditional managers who've been focused on maximizing the output and utilization of resources get inspired to transform their thoughts towards this new paradigm? What is their incentive to do so? What are some of their apprehensions? Let me start with how do they get an incentive to do so? If we think about cycle time for a given team, that will affect the outcomes. Now, I'm not sure how many of those managers have output goals or outcome goals, right? Outcomes are finishing work that customers can use. I will just say that, right? And if you're lucky, you can finish work at least every other day or a minimum once an iteration. So I'm assuming that you have some kind of agility in your organization. So the incentive for more traditional managers is to reduce the cycle time. I have a whole bunch of posts on my website about cycle time. And if you need them, if you need a starting point, send me an email later. I'm jr@jrothman.com. Happy to give you some. So we have to make it useful for managers to say, this is a valuable way to work. And the way we do that is how fast can we capitalize the product? And that's all about cycle time. So if you use CapEx, not OpEx, then cycle time really matters. And that means that managers might have an incentive to stop kind of the micromanagement interfering with everybody below them. Now, the apprehensions are very, very real because managers get bonuses, and too many managers get way too many bonuses based on their particular resource efficiency, even if it's not the resource efficiency of the team. So even if they get the teams to work more in flow efficiency, there's no incentive for managers to work across the organization. That's where reinforcing feedback and managing your cycle time as a manager, especially for decisions, might make an impact on your boss. So does that help, Manish? I see you nodding.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. It really helps.
Okay, good.
Zach, I see you've come off mute, and I wondered whether it was because you were stewing on something and wanted to ask a question.
No, I was just paying. Tom's got his hand up. If you want to go to him first, I can speak for hours, Matt, as you know.
As I know.
I'm trying to listen this evening.
Tom, would you like to join in?
Yeah. Hi, Johanna. I think from a previous podcast I heard, I can't remember you making a point about helping managers kind of rediscover their purpose by moving away from what they've known. And I think the point that really struck me that you were making was that managers who've grown up within an organization have followed the people above them. They've copied the habits. They've been embedded in the culture. And now we're sort of saying, you've got to do all these new things. And all these new things are great, but you've got to let go of some of the old things as well. I'm working with a local government organization at the moment who are in exactly that place. Lots of people grown up from within. I just wondered if there's a particular catalyst or trigger that we can use to kind of help them start that process of moving away and moving towards. If you've got any magic dust you could sprinkle on the situation, that'd be great.
So I'm not sure if I've actually published the delegation checklist, or I have a delegation table in one of the in the first book of Modern Management Made Easy, Practical Ways to Manage Yourself. And if I have not yet published the delegation ideas on my blog, ping me and I will publish another one. I know that one of the leadership tips is about micromanagement, but I'm not sure if there's a table or a checklist for that. I think one of the hardest things for me when I moved from my first technical contributor job to a manager job was letting go of my technology contributions. And as I moved up, it was letting go of my first level management. And as I moved up, right, it was, how do I trust the people that I have left behind to do the job that I did? And for me, that was all about redefining my new purpose. What is the value I offer to the organization in this role? And when I wrote that down, I said, holy moly, except I swore, I'm not doing that. I'm not offering this value if I continue to hang on to the old stuff. I need to get rid of the old stuff, not drop it on the floor, right? But make sure somebody else has taken it so that I can offer this new value to the organization.
Okay, that sounds like an interesting place to start with a question. Like what's the new value that you're adding in this new role? What do you need to let go of to allow you to achieve that?
Well, and I think it's really important. In my case, I had to write it down. Maybe other people can say it. I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that every manager write down the value that they deliver to the organization, and that will guide them into what they keep and what they relinquish, and how do they delegate.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Next question.
Is there, oh, sorry, Zach, go on.
So, yes, I was listening to a lot of what you said, and what I see is a couple of things. One is a change in the paradigm, where software development is moving from the architectural way of working more to being like movies and games. So instead of building from the database up and then the service layers like your services in a house, it's more like, let's get the UCD, get the screenplay up, and then the services fit underneath, and the databases are more or less there now. We've got managers who come from the architectural mindset, and the people that I'm working with that are coming out of university and are still at school making games using the MIT software, they're just bringing this stuff right out. Their project plans go from what has to be done, let's do it, get it out. And that brings up a new way of looking at projects, which in short is Agile depends on playbooks, whereas the company should be looking at the book of the play, by which I mean the libretto for an orchestra, the script for a theatre, or a screenplay. So you can see that I'm attacking this from both sides. And the other thing that gives is the ability to flow rack work. So you get your swim lanes up in a Kanban board. If it's going out every day, it's like use CI/CD. If it's going out 2 or 3 times a week, it's like a soap opera. If it's a serial, it's once a week. If it's a feature, it's a one-off. And if you've got a Disney type approach, let's bet the company on it, it's a blockbuster. And the other beauty of that is to get managers involved in it is that instead of having a stand-up at the beginning of the day, you show the software that's working as screens at the end of the day. And then all you have to do with that is manage their expectations to say, to go from that screen, to get it out, we have to put in the extra bit, bolt on the security, and then put it straight out using our stuff. So there's ways that it can be done, but in too many places I see managers who do not want to train their staff because they think that the staff will be a threat to them or that the staff will leave. A company that did that is in the news today, excuse me, is Atos, and their share price has dived because they've been found out at what they're doing. So there's a whole stack of stuff. And finally, the thing that you were saying about thinking time, I call that flow rack. And if you can focus, so a flow rack period, you set up 4 activities in a day where you take a break from every 2 hours, spend 15 minutes doing something that may or may not be work related. So that gets rid of the sunk cost because you charge the project. If it is work related, something can go back in. But what you're trying to do is get your mind into the flow state, and that activates gamma waves. And gamma waves destroy the proteins that build the neural plaques in the brain, which lead to dementia and Alzheimer's. So what we're seeing is a way of being able to, in the way that you brush your teeth in the morning, you brush your teeth at night, and maybe after lunch. This is a way of brushing your brain and helping managers brush their brains. So it's something that appeals to people that are a bit older, AKA managers. So if they get into that, it's quite easy to say, look, if you're doing this, boss, why don't we get the team to do it? And we'll do it over a period where they can bring stuff together. That's a more fun way of working, I find. And it brings the teams together when they've got this shared way of doing it, and you get cross-learning between the generations. Yeah, let's do it that way. Sorry, that's just me. I told you I could speak for us. Sorry, Al.
Any response to that, Johanna, before we close down?
So you did say a couple things. One is too many organizations, senior leaders have a very mechanistic view of organizations, that if I just create a well-oiled machine, everything will work. That people are human. There's no way we can be mechanistic with people. And the thing about taking a break is you talked about something that sounded a little like Pomodoro, which I think is actually very useful. I'm not sure about brain brushing, but that's an interesting idea. So.
Try mental flossing.
Okay, mental flossing. Okay, go ahead, Matt. I think it's up to you.
Yeah, so well, really, it's to wrap it up. We've gone past the hour. It's been a fascinating, and it's a lovely conversation afterwards, as well as it always is when you visit us, Johanna. So thank you very much for that. Thank you so much for the talk. Just a little bit of a look down to the future as well. So over the next couple of months, actually next week next month we're a bit unclear. So that'll be a lovely surprise. We'll announce that as soon as possible. And that's July. Then we're looking to do our sort of quarterly or sort of open space, periodic anyway. It's not always every quarter. So an open space so we can all come and share our ideas, and we look forward to that. That'll be brilliant. And then actually something that's quite pertinent about the topics we've been discussing with Johanna as well is that in September we've got Pia Maria Torren, author of Agile People, and so agility in HR. So leaving off from Johanna and into this thing about, how do we look at performance of teams and of individuals in an agile sort of lens, through an agile lens. Pia Maria will come and show us some great techniques for that. So look out for that, and please sign up for that. So yeah, we'll see you next month for a surprise. We'll announce that soon. And again, thank you very much for everyone, for our fantastic community. Thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. And obviously, thank you very, very much to Johanna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
Thanks, Johanna.
Cheers.
Thank you.